Writing a novel is like making love, but it's also like having a tooth pulled. Pleasure and pain. Sometimes it's like making love while having a tooth pulled. Dean Koontz. Hi, hello, and welcome again everybody to another episode of Natural Juan. This time around we're going to discuss my top 3 favorite novels from author Dean Koontz. Before we start though, I'd like to invite you all to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications. Also, here's a special shout out to Mr. Jonathan Green, my patron in Patreon. If you want to support what I do here on my channel, you'll find my Patreon information in the description below, along with a PayPal account in case you'd just like to make a quick and easy donation. With all that out of the way, let's get started on my top 3 favorite novels by Dean Koontz. Anyway, we've had our little conversation about Dean Koontz in one of my older videos that focuses on the ancient enemy, the monster of the novel Phantoms. He is a prolific author of suspense, horror, and science fiction, and is often compared to Stephen King because of his friendly and all too familiar characters and scenarios. That said, one thing that separates him from his rival Stephen King is his stories tend to be more optimistic and upbeat. Another thing to note is, Dean Koontz tends to lean more towards science fiction rather than fantasy, meaning even his most outlandish and terrifying of scenarios and creatures can be explained through scientific means. Despite that, however, some of his works can be really out there, as we will soon discover. So, since I don't want to leave you guys hanging out here for too long, let's dive into his works. First up, we have Soul Survivor, a story that starts off as tragic and horrifying but gradually reveals something both mysterious and wonderful. We begin with a man named Joe Carpenter, a former journalist who is currently grieving for his wife and daughter, both of whom have died in a plane crash. Day after day, he wanders through life like a living zombie, not knowing what to do now that his reason for living has been all but ripped away from him. To say that everything has gone to hell for him would be a gross understatement, as he struggles with thoughts of taking his own life. Then one day he meets a strange woman taking pictures of the graves of his wife and daughter, and something about it tells him that there was something about his family's death that no one bothered to tell him. Using his journalistic skills of old, Joe Carpenter delves deep into the events that transpired before the plane crashed and took the lives of his wife and daughter. What he soon discovers though is that the mystery is a lot deeper than he originally thought, and that he may well be in over his head. He soon learns that the mysterious woman he saw at his family's graves was a scientist named Rose, who is, much to his surprise and disbelief, one of 2 survivors of the plane crash. It is then revealed that the other survivor is a young girl whom Joe hopes might actually be his daughter, who also managed to survive the disastrous flight. Unfortunately, it also seems that something terrible is afoot, and that Joe must use all his strength and resourcefulness if he wants a new shot at life, along with the strange woman he has just met. For there is something else too that has become aware of both Rose and Joe, and it will use all its power to hunt them down and whatever great secret the scientist is keeping. Soul Survivor is a harrowing adventure with heavy themes of science fiction. I will say though that I was most surprised by the book's message of hope and renewal. Also, despite being a science fiction novel, it has a lot to do with faith and even has elements of a Christian apocalypse scenario. Next up, we have The Taking, another seemingly science fiction story. But is it? The story opens with a young female writer named Molly waking up in the dead of night. She sees that there is a storm outside her house, with rain that both smells and feels all too strange. After crossing the boundary between her home and the wilderness outside, she comes face to face with a pack of coyotes. However, instead of attacking her, as you'd probably expect from such animals in a horror story like this, they seem to be surprisingly tame to her hand and act as if she is one of them. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is just the beginning of how strange this story is. Her husband, Neil, experiences terrible nightmares that, when Molly finally gets back to him, discovers that they might not be nightmares at all. He feels an oppressive presence descending from the sky, and even describes it as a mountain coming down on their heads. As the story goes on, they even have shared moments where they are not sure whether they are hallucinating or something even more sinister is afoot. The couple is forced to leave in order to take shelter in a nearby town, which they assume to be safer than their current residence. They even try to take their lonely neighbor with them, but soon learn, much to their horror, that the man had just killed himself and that a malevolent being now shares his home with him. On their way to town, the couple learn through their car radio that the Earth is being invaded by aliens and shudder at the thought. Upon arriving in town, Molly and Neil see that people are gathering into large groups that are divided by their opinions. There are those that seem to think that the alleged alien invaders might actually be benevolent, and that all they've done so far, including the horrific torture and murder of astronauts, might just be a huge misunderstanding. Then there are those who cannot decide what to actually do or even think, and believe that they must await further information before deciding on anything. Third and last are the people who see the aliens as the hostile threat that they are, and prepare a defense in the nearby bank. Most curious of all, though, is how the dogs seem to react to the couple upon encountering them. While neither Molly nor Neil have ever even seen, let alone met some of the animals, they all immediately seem loyal to them as if they were their owners. And it is here that I'll end this introduction to The Taking without spoiling too much for you. Again, this is another supposedly science fiction story that dangles an idea but quickly snatches it up to reveal something else. Nonetheless, I actually enjoyed the twist in this novel's plot, and found it strangely appropriate to all the weirdness found in the novel. Thematically speaking, The Taking asks a lot of questions about modern living, and whether or not our ways today are a boon or a bane to humanity. Last, of course, is Strangers, a rather thick book by Dean Koontz standards. This is one of my favorite Dean Koontz novels because of how well he can work with so many characters. We've got Dominic, who is an otherwise ordinary man who has problems with sleepwalking. Then we have Ginger, a doctor who has a series of inexplicable fugue states and frightful memories of being detained and being injected with a syringe. There's also Father Brendan, a Catholic priest who has lost his faith for some reason, but has also received a strange gift of some kind. Then there's just about everyone else, and boy is there a lot of them. It soon becomes apparent that the many characters in the book seem to have experienced something together in the past, though they've all forgotten about it somehow. Worse yet, they are apparently being observed and experimented with due to their forgotten shared experience. These titular strangers must now work together if they want to find out what really happened to them, and fight off the forces that seek to control them. Unlike the first two novels I talked about, this one is mostly science fiction. Mostly, anyway. Though there are hints of supernatural forces at work here too. Nonetheless, I'd prefer not to reveal too much again, as I'd rather you find more about it yourself. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for this episode of Natural Juan. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications. Also, if you'd like to support my channel and what I do here, you'll find my Patreon information in the description below, along with a PayPal account in case you'd like to just make a quick and easy donation. Natural Juan out.